The years before and after the church. The age of the Gentiles. A period of history God established to judge his people Israel. The name reflects the purpose of the age. It is a period of history when Israel will be under judgment. Did you know that the Old Testament saints did not know about the church age? It was revealed to them in tiny pieces that they always called a mystery, but not enough to know anything about it, and that was purposeful in God's plan. But the age of the Gentiles stops with the reversal of three factors that began it. First, Israel would be subjected to Gentile powers. Secondly, the Jewish people would be scattered outside their land, exiled in other nations. Thirdly, the city of Jerusalem would be conquered and occupied to varying degrees by Gentiles. For as long as these three things remain true, the age of the Gentiles continues. And another thing we might not have ever realized, that we are Gentiles. The world in God's eyes and in the Bible only name two different peoples, and they are the Jews and the others. And the others are Gentiles, and that's us. The last image in Nebuchadnezzar's dream is a rock fallen from heaven, uncut by human hands, that destroys the statue. It falls at the feet of the statue, representing an end of the timeline and an end to the age of the Gentiles and Gentile domination over Israel. This will establish a new kingdom that fills the whole earth, and that is the kingdom age. We know that the fourth kingdom is the only one that really matters because it brings us to Jesus and is the one we are in today. It does and should have our attention. An occurrence that we really need to get in our mind and know what it relates to is when Nebuchadnezzar rode into Jerusalem and conquered the city. It took him 3 hitches, but from the first time he rode in, this began the age of the Gentiles. So we can always remember that from that occurrence. Now we go into Daniel 7:2, where he says, I was looking in my vision by night, and behold, the 4 winds of heaven were stirring up the great sea, and 4 great beasts were coming up from the sea, different from one another. The first was like a lion and had the wings of an eagle. I kept looking until its wings were plucked, and it was lifted up from the ground and made to stand on 2 feet like a man. A human mind also was given to it. And behold, another beast, a second one resembling a bear, and it was raised up on one side, and 3 ribs were in its mouth between its teeth. And thus they said to it, Arise, devour much meat. After this I kept looking, and behold, another one like a leopard, which had on its back 4 wings of a bird. The beast also had 4 heads, and dominion was given it. Because of Daniel 2, we can summarize this passage. First, we start with a lion, which, like the head of gold in our statue, represents the nation of Babylon. Secondly, there is a bear with 3 ribs, which represent the Medo-Persians. A leopard with wings represents the absurd speed of the Greek conquest. And the 4 heads and 4 wings represent the kingdom split into 4 parts upon the death of Alexander the Great. Daniel 7:7 says, After this I kept looking in the night visions, and behold, a 4th beast, dreadful and terrifying and extremely strong. And it had large iron teeth. It devoured and crushed and trampled down the remainder with its feet. And it was different from all the beasts that were before it, and it had 10 horns. While I was contemplating the horns, behold, another horn, a little one came up among them, and 3 of the first horns were pulled out by the roots before it. And behold, this horn possessed eyes like the eyes of a man, and a mouth uttering great boasts. While in the case of the first 3 animals, Daniel referred to real animals, but in this case, he was at a loss for comparison. This animal was simply dreadful and terrifying, and like the statues, this 4th beast crushes and breaks apart the previous 3 kingdoms. Nebuchadnezzar was the only man granted power over the whole earth. We're seeing a pattern that the ones who come at the end is like the one who comes at the beginning. Daniel 7:21 says, I kept looking, and that horn was waging war with the saints and overpowering them. He will speak out against the Most High and wear down the saints of the Highest One. And he will intend to make alterations in times and in law, and they will be given into his hand for a time, times, and a half time. This term appears only here in Revelation. If it were not for Revelation, we wouldn't be able to interpret its meaning. But in Revelation, we learn that this term means 3.5 years. The end of this age is marked by an upheaval in rule, such that the entire planet will be under the authority of 10 kings. And during the final 3.5 years, the 10 are overtaken by a single man who disposes 3 and persecutes believers. He rules until Christ's return. The church age exists entirely with the 4th kingdom. Daniel 9 gives us the timing of those events and lets us put the church in the proper perspective. Daniel 9:2 says, In the first year of his reign, I, Daniel, observed in the books the number of the years, which was revealed as the word of the Lord to Jeremiah the prophet, for the completion of the desolations of Jerusalem, namely 70 years. Daniel is in the first year of Darius of Median descent, which tells us that the Babylonian Empire has fallen to the Medo-Persians. This happened about 69 years after the nation of Israel had been taken captive by Nebuchadnezzar. Daniel is now an old man, having spent most of his life in Babylon. And on this day, he is reading the books, meaning the books of Scripture. And among those books, he's reading Jeremiah. Daniel reads that the number of years appointed for the completion of Jerusalem's desolation was 70 years. The Lord promised to set Israel outside the land if they disobeyed the land Sabbath requirement in Leviticus 26:32, where he says, I will make the land desolate so that your enemies who settle in it will be appalled over it. You, however, I will scatter among the nations and will draw out a sword after you as your land becomes desolate and your cities become waste. Then the land will enjoy its Sabbaths all the days of the desolation while you are in your enemy's land. Then the land will rest and enjoy its Sabbaths. To understand this, we have to go back to the law. The nation of Israel was required to allow the land to go unplanted every 7th year. This allowed the land to rest, which improved future harvest. To ensure the people had enough food in the 7th year, the Lord provided a double harvest in the 6th year. But in time, the people forgot the law and farmed all 7 years. This disobedience went on for a long time, for 490 years, until Israel owed the land 70 Sabbath years of rest. Daniel assumed that the 70 years was the entire time for the age of the Gentiles represented by the statue. He assumed that once Israel had paid its penalty in Babylon and returned to the land, the kingdom would arrive as well. Daniel 9:4 says, I prayed to the Lord my God and confessed and said, Alas, O Lord, the great and awesome God, who keeps his covenant and loving kindness for those who love him and keep his commandments. We have sinned, committed iniquity, acted wickedly, and rebelled, even turning aside from your commandments and ordinances. Why did he feel the need to pray in that way? Because of something Daniel remembered from elsewhere in Leviticus 26. Leviticus 26:40 says, If they confess their iniquity and the iniquity of their forefathers in their unfaithfulness which they committed against me, and also in their acting with hostility against me, then I will remember my covenant with Jacob, and I will remember also my covenant with Isaac, and my covenant with Abraham as well, and I will remember the land. Hostility refers to Israel's rejection of Jesus in his first coming. The Abrahamic covenant is unconditional. Leviticus 26 simply defines the timing of its fulfillment. Daniel's mistake prompted the Lord to correct Daniel's mistake by sending the angel Gabriel to give Daniel the correct view. Daniel 9:21 says, While I was still speaking in prayer, then the man Gabriel, whom I had seen in the vision previously, came to me in my extreme weariness about the time of the evening offering. He gave me instruction and talked with me and said, O Daniel, I have come forth to give you insight with understanding. Then Gabriel tells Daniel that 70 weeks has been appointed for Daniel's people, not merely 70 years. The literal word in Hebrew is Shavat, which is translated as sevens. Gabriel said that the time for Daniel's people and for the city of Jerusalem would be 70 years, which equals 490. Would be 77s, which equals 490. But 490 of what? Days, weeks, months, or years? Really, the only conclusion is years. Gabriel burst Daniel's bubble by saying that the age of the Gentiles would last 490 years. It turns out that the 490 years is counted in a unique manner, and Gabriel gives us the way to count those years in the next passage of Daniel 9:25. So you are to know and discern that from the issuing of a decree to restore and rebuild Jerusalem until Messiah the Prince, there will be 7 weeks and 62 weeks. It will be built again with plaza and moat, even in times of distress. Then after the 62 weeks, the Messiah will be cut off and have nothing. And the people of the Prince who has come will destroy the city and the sanctuary. And its end will come with a flood. Even to the end there will be war and desolations. Note that literally between Daniel 9:26 and 27 lies the church age. Daniel 9:27 says, And he, the Antichrist, will make a firm covenant with the many for 1 week, but in the middle of the week he will stop sacrifice and grain offering by God's people, the Orthodox Jews. And on the wing of abominations will come one who makes desolate, even until a complete destruction, one that is decreed, is poured out on the one who makes desolate, which is the Antichrist. Okay, Daniel's 77s are counted in 3 blocks. The first block runs from the issuing of a decree to rebuild the city until the rebuilding is complete. That first section lasts 7 sevens, or 49 years. The second block runs continuously from the rebuilding of the city until the Messiah. That second block is 62 weeks, or 434 years, and ends with the Messiah being cut off. We now understand that being cut off refers to Jesus' death on the cross. The total years from the decree until the Messiah's death will be 69 sevens, or 483 years. At that point, we still lack a 7-year period to bring the age of the Gentiles to an end. This lasts for 490 years, but includes a pause period, the church age, before the final 7.